The earth beneath our feet holds secrets that refuse to yield their truths. Mysteries carved in stone, buried in sand, and hidden within the very fabric of ancient civilizations that once thrived where now only whispers remain. Across every continent, archaeologists have unearthed artifacts, structures, and evidence of human ingenuity that defy our understanding, challenge our assumptions about the past, and force us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the capabilities of our ancestors. These are not mere curiosities or anomalies easily dismissed. They are profound enigmas that have consumed the careers of brilliant scholars, sparked heated debates in academic circles, and captured the imagination of millions who sense that our history is far more complex, far more mysterious, than the neat narratives presented in textbooks. From massive stone structures that seem impossible to construct with ancient technology, to artifacts discovered in layers of earth where they simply should not exist, to writing systems that resist all attempts at translation, to ancient maps that appear to show continents before they were officially discovered, the archaeological record is filled with puzzles that mock our certainty and humble our pride. Today, we embark on a journey through 60 minutes of the most perplexing, controversial, and mind-bending archaeological mysteries that remain unexplained despite decades, and in some cases centuries, of investigation. We will venture into the jungles of Central America, descend into the deserts of Egypt and Peru, explore remote islands in the Pacific, examine strange artifacts pulled from European bogs, and confront evidence that suggests human history may be far older, far more advanced, and far stranger than we ever imagined. Some of these mysteries involve construction techniques that modern engineers struggle to replicate even with contemporary machinery. Others concern astronomical knowledge that ancient peoples supposedly could not have possessed. Still others involve artifacts that appear to be out of their proper time, technological anachronisms that challenge the linear progression of human development. Skeptics dismiss many of these enigmas as misinterpretations, hoaxes, or the result of natural phenomena misunderstood, while believers see evidence of lost civilizations, advanced ancient technologies, or even extraterrestrial contact. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in the complex middle ground between dismissive skepticism and uncritical acceptance. What cannot be denied, however, is that these mysteries exist. They persist despite our best efforts to explain them, and they continue to generate new questions even as old ones remain unanswered. Let us begin our exploration in the scorching desert of Egypt, where the Great Pyramid of Giza stands as perhaps the most famous and most studied archaeological enigma in human history. Built supposedly during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu around 2560 BCE, this massive structure consists of approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons, with some blocks in the king's chamber weighing as much as 80 tons. The precision with which these blocks were cut and fitted together remains astonishing. In many places, the joints between blocks are so tight that a razor blade cannot fit between them. The pyramid's base covers 13 acres and its four sides are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, deviating by only 3/60th of a single degree. This level of precision requires advanced surveying techniques and astronomical knowledge that, according to conventional understanding, the ancient Egyptians should not have possessed. Moreover, the pyramid incorporates mathematical relationships that suggest its builders had sophisticated knowledge of geometry and possibly even the value of pi and the golden ratio. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its height approximates 2 pi with remarkable accuracy, while other proportions seem to encode the relationship between the Earth and the Moon. Mainstream Egyptologists maintain that the pyramid was built using copper tools, wooden sledges, ramps, and the labor of tens of thousands of workers over a period of about 20 years. However, experimental archaeology has repeatedly demonstrated the immense difficulty of cutting and moving such massive stones using these primitive methods, particularly the harder granite blocks that were transported from quarries hundreds of miles away. Some researchers have calculated that, to complete the pyramid in 20 years, workers would have had to quarry, transport, dress, and set one block every 2 to 3 minutes, working day and night without pause, a pace that seems almost impossible to maintain. Alternative theories abound, ranging from the use of internal ramps to the suggestion of water-based construction techniques, but none have been definitively proven, and the question of how the pyramids were actually built remains, to this day, partially unanswered. Even more mysterious are the questions surrounding why the pyramids were built with such precision and what knowledge their dimensions might encode. The pyramid's orientation, its mathematical properties, and its relationship to other structures in the Giza complex suggest a level of planning and purpose that goes beyond mere tomb construction, hinting at astronomical observations, geodetic knowledge, or ritual significance we have yet to fully comprehend. Moving south to the Peruvian desert, we encounter another set of enigmas that have baffled researchers since their discovery. The Nazca Lines, a collection of enormous geoglyphs etched into the arid plateau between the towns of Nazca and Palpa, created by the Nazca culture between 500 BCE and 500 CE. These lines form hundreds of figures including simple geometric shapes, complex spirals, and massive depictions of animals such as monkeys, spiders, hummingbirds, and a killer whale. Some of these figures stretch for hundreds of feet, and their full forms can only be appreciated from the air, leading to one of the central mysteries. Why would an ancient culture create images that they themselves could not properly view from ground level? The lines were made by removing the reddish pebbles that cover the desert surface, revealing the lighter-colored ground beneath, and the dry, windless conditions of the Nazca Desert have preserved them for over 1,500 years. Various theories have been proposed to explain their purpose. Some researchers suggest they were astronomical calendars or markers pointing to celestial events like solstices and equinoxes. Others believe they were pathways used in religious processions or pilgrimage routes connecting sacred sites. Still others propose they were offerings to deities in the sky or requests for water in an arid region where rainfall was scarce and precious. The most controversial theory, popularized in the 1960s and 70s, suggested that the lines were landing strips or signals for extraterrestrial visitors, an idea that mainstream archaeology dismisses as pseudoscience but which captures the imagination nonetheless because it speaks to the profound strangeness of creating such massive artworks that seem designed for aerial viewing. Recent research has revealed that the lines are associated with water and fertility rituals, as many of them lead toward sources of water or mountains where water originates, suggesting the Nazca people created them as part of ceremonies to ensure agricultural success. However, this explanation, while plausible, does not fully account for the precision, scale, and effort involved in creating hundreds of these massive geoglyphs over several centuries. How did the Nazca people plan and execute such large-scale designs without the ability to see them from above? What techniques did they use to maintain the straightness of lines that stretch for miles across uneven terrain? Why did this cultural practice persist for so long and then suddenly cease? These questions remain only partially answered, and the Nazca Lines continue to provoke wonder and debate among archaeologists and visitors alike. From South America, we journey across the Pacific Ocean to Easter Island, or Rapa Nui as it is known to its indigenous inhabitants, where nearly 900 massive stone statues called moai stand sentinel over the landscape, carved from compressed volcanic ash between 1250 and 1500 CE by the Rapa Nui people. These statues range from 6 to 33 feet tall and weigh between 20 and 80 tons on average, with some unfinished examples in the quarries weighing as much as 200 tons. The moai represent ancestral figures and were erected on ceremonial platforms called ahu around the island's perimeter, facing inland to watch over the villages and protect the living. The mystery that has captivated researchers for generations centers on how these massive statues were transported from the quarries in the Reno Raraku crater to their final locations, sometimes as far as 11 miles away, across rough terrain without the benefit of wheeled vehicles, draft animals, or metal tools. Traditional archaeological theory suggested the statues were moved horizontally on wooden sledges or rollers, pulled by teams of workers using ropes, but experiments attempting to replicate this method have proven difficult and not entirely convincing. A more recent and intriguing theory proposes that the moai were walked to their destinations in an upright position, using ropes attached to the head to rock them forward while a team at the base kept them balanced, much like moving a refrigerator. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated this method could work, and it aligns with oral traditions that speak of the statues walking to their platforms through magical power or mana. However, this theory does not explain how the largest moai, or those positioned on particularly difficult terrain, were moved and erected. The mystery deepens when we consider the collapse of Rapa Nui society, which occurred around the same time statue construction ceased. The island, once covered with palm forests, was almost completely deforested by the time European explorers arrived in 1722, and the population had crashed from an estimated peak of 15,000 to just 2,000 or 3,000 inhabitants. What caused this catastrophic societal collapse remains debated. Some researchers point to ecological disaster brought on by overconsumption of resources, particularly the cutting of trees for statue transport and firewood, leading to soil erosion, agricultural failure, and eventual famine. Others emphasize the role of introduced diseases, slave raids, and colonization by Europeans in decimating the population. More recent evidence suggests that Polynesian rats, arriving with the first settlers, may have contributed to deforestation by eating palm nuts and preventing forest regeneration, complicating the narrative of human-caused ecological destruction. The moai themselves present additional mysteries. Why were they carved with such distinctive elongated features, oversized heads, and prominent brows? What significance did these characteristics hold for the Rapa Nui people? Why did statue construction suddenly accelerate in the final centuries before the collapse, with hundreds of moai left unfinished in the quarries as if work suddenly stopped? And perhaps most hauntingly, why were nearly all the erected moai eventually toppled, their faces deliberately placed against the ground during a period of apparent social chaos and conflict? The story of Easter Island serves as both an archaeological mystery and a cautionary tale about resource management. But many questions about the moai, their transport, their meaning, and the civilization that created them remain unresolved. Returning to the ancient world of the Mediterranean, we encounter Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, a site that has revolutionized our understanding of human prehistory since its excavation began in the mid-1990s. Radiocarbon dating places the construction of Göbekli Tepe's earliest structures at around 9,600 BCE, making it approximately 11,000 years old and predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000 years. This chronology is staggering because it means Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers before the development of agriculture, pottery, writing, or metal tools during what archaeologists call the pre-pottery Neolithic period. The site consists of multiple circular structures defined by massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing 18 feet tall and weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in rings with two larger pillars positioned at the center. These pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of animals including lions, boars, foxes, snakes, scorpions, vultures, and other creatures rendered with remarkable artistic skill and attention to detail. The sophistication of the construction, the artistry of the carvings, and the sheer scale of the undertaking challenge previous assumptions about the capabilities of prehistoric hunter-gatherers, who were supposedly organized in small, nomadic bands focused primarily on survival. The effort required to quarry, transport, and erect these massive pillars would have demanded a large, coordinated workforce and some form of social hierarchy or organizational structure that archaeologists did not believe existed at such an early date. Moreover, the site appears to be a temple or ritual center rather than a settlement, as relatively few domestic artifacts have been found and there is no evidence of permanent habitation. This suggests that Göbekli Tepe served as a gathering place for multiple groups who came together periodically to participate in ceremonies, feasts, and construction projects. implying a level of social complexity and shared belief systems that predates our previous understanding of religious architecture and organized religion. The mystery deepens when we consider that around 8000 BCE, after perhaps 1600 years of use, the site was deliberately buried, with the circular structures carefully filled in with debris and soil as if to preserve and hide them. Why would the builders go to such extraordinary effort to bury their monumental creation? Was it an act of ritual closure, environmental necessity, or something else entirely? The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has led archaeologists to reconsider the relationship between social complexity and agriculture, suggesting that perhaps the need to gather for ritual purposes and support large-scale construction projects may have driven the development of agriculture rather than agriculture enabling social complexity, turning the traditional narrative on its head. Yet, despite years of excavation and study, many questions remain. Who exactly were the people who built Göbekli Tepe? What beliefs motivated them to create such an elaborate ceremonial center? What do the animal carvings represent? And do they encode astronomical knowledge or mythological narratives we cannot decode? Why are certain animals featured prominently while others are absent? And what other undiscovered sites from this period might exist, waiting to further revolutionize our understanding of human prehistory? Ground-penetrating radar indicates that much more of Göbekli Tepe remains unexcavated beneath the surface, and similar sites are being discovered across the region, suggesting we are only beginning to understand the scope and sophistication of these ancient cultures. In the realm of undeciphered writing systems, few mysteries are more tantalizing than the Indus Valley script, a collection of symbols used by the Harappan civilization that flourished in what is now Pakistan and northwestern India from approximately 3300 to 1300 BCE. At its height, the Indus Valley civilization rivaled ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia in size and sophistication, with well-planned cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa featuring advanced urban planning, standardized brick sizes, sophisticated drainage systems, and evidence of long-distance trade networks. Yet despite the discovery of thousands of inscribed artifacts including seals, pottery, tools, and tablets bearing the Indus script, no one has successfully deciphered this writing system in the century since its discovery. The script consists of approximately 400 to 600 distinct symbols, appearing in short sequences of 4 to 5 symbols on average, though some inscriptions contain up to 26 symbols. This brevity is one of the central challenges in decipherment. Without longer texts, it is extremely difficult to identify patterns, establish grammatical rules, or understand the underlying language structure. Complicating matters further is the lack of a bilingual text, similar to the Rosetta Stone that enabled the decipherment of Egyptian hieroglyphs, which could provide a key to understanding the script by presenting the same text in a known language. Researchers have proposed numerous theories about the nature of the Indus script. Some believe it represents a logosyllabic writing system encoding a Dravidian language. Others suggest it is a proto-language related to Sanskrit or other Indo-European tongues, while some controversial researchers have argued it is not true writing at all, but rather a system of non-linguistic symbols used for identification or ritual purposes. Computer-based statistical analyses have detected patterns consistent with linguistic structure, suggesting the script does encode language, but without understanding what language is being represented or having longer texts to analyze, decipherment remains elusive. The mystery is deepened by the sudden decline of the Indus Valley civilization around 1300 BCE, when the major cities were abandoned and the script fell out of use, leaving no direct descendants or continuous tradition that might provide clues to its meaning. Climate change, river system alterations, declining trade, or invasions by Indo-Aryan peoples have all been proposed as causes for this collapse. But the lack of written records that we can read means we cannot access the civilization's own account of its decline. The undeciphered script represents a massive gap in our historical knowledge, leaving the literature, laws, beliefs, and historical records of one of the world's great ancient civilizations locked away in symbols we cannot read, stories we cannot hear, and a voice that has been silent for over 3,000 years. waiting for someone to finally understand its message. Across the Atlantic Ocean in Central America, the ancient Maya civilization left behind another mystery that has only recently been illuminated, but which raises new questions even as it answers old ones. The true extent and scale of Maya urban development hidden beneath the jungle canopy. For decades, archaeologists believe the Maya lived primarily in relatively small city-states separated by vast stretches of uninhabited jungle, but revolutionary LiDAR technology, which uses laser pulses to penetrate vegetation and map ground surfaces, has revealed a dramatically different picture. Surveys conducted in Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico have uncovered the remains of tens of thousands of previously unknown structures, including houses, palaces, causeways, fortifications, and agricultural terraces, suggesting the Maya population at its peak may have been 2 or 3 times larger than previously estimated, possibly reaching 10 to 15 million people. These LiDAR surveys have revealed massive urban complexes connected by raised stone causeways stretching for dozens of miles, sophisticated water management systems including reservoirs and irrigation channels, and extensive agricultural modifications of the landscape including terraced hillsides and drained wetlands that allowed intensive farming to support large populations. The mystery that emerges from these discoveries concerns how such a densely populated civilization sustained itself in the challenging environment of the tropical rainforest and what ultimately caused its collapse. The classic Maya collapse, occurring between 800 and 1000 CE, saw the abandonment of major cities in the southern lowlands, a dramatic population decline, and the cessation of monument building and hieroglyphic writing. Researchers have long debated the causes of this collapse, with theories ranging from environmental degradation and drought to warfare, disease, and political upheaval. The new LiDAR data reveals evidence of extensive fortifications and defensive walls, suggesting that warfare may have been more pervasive and destructive than previously thought. But it also shows the incredible scale of environmental modification the Maya undertook, raising questions about whether they pushed their environment beyond sustainable limits. Additionally, the Maya made remarkable achievements in astronomy, mathematics, and calendar systems that demonstrate sophisticated observational skills and abstract thinking. Their long count calendar, capable of tracking time over thousands of years, their accurate calculations of planetary cycles, and their apparent prediction of eclipses all speak to advanced astronomical knowledge. Yet we still do not fully understand how they made these observations without telescopes or other optical instruments, what purposes their elaborate calendar systems served beyond timekeeping, or how astronomical knowledge was integrated into their religious and political systems. The recent decipherment of much of the Maya hieroglyphic writing system has provided invaluable insights into Maya history, beliefs, and society. Yet many texts remain untranslated. Many codices were destroyed by Spanish conquistadors and priests, and countless questions about Maya culture, science, and the reasons for their civilization's transformation remain partially answered at best, especially as new discoveries continue to reveal just how much we have yet to learn about this remarkable culture. In the cold waters of the Baltic Sea lies another enigma that has sparked intense debate since its discovery. The Baltic Sea anomaly, an unusual formation detected on the seafloor in 2011 by a Swedish treasure hunting team using sonar. The formation appears as a 60-meter diameter circular structure with what seem to be geometric features, straight edges, and unusual surface characteristics sitting at a depth of approximately 85 meters. Sonar images suggest the formation has features resembling ramps, staircases, and angular structures that look strikingly artificial, leading to wild speculation about crashed UFOs, ancient megalithic structures, or secret military installations. Skeptics and geologists who have examined samples from the site insist it is a natural glacial formation, specifically a glacial deposit or bedrock formation shaped by Ice Age glaciers that covered the region until about 10,000 years ago. They point out that glacial erosion can create unusual geometric patterns, straight edges, and circular formations through natural processes, and that volcanic rock samples from the site show characteristics consistent with glacial deposits. However, mystery enthusiasts and some researchers claim that certain features of the formation, including what appear to be right angles and symmetrical structures, are difficult to explain through natural processes alone. They also point to reports from the discovery team claiming that electronic equipment malfunctioned when directly above the formation, though these reports remain unverified by independent investigation. Additionally, some argue that the samples taken from the site have been insufficient to characterize the entire structure, and that more thorough archaeological investigation is warranted before dismissing the possibility of artificial construction. The debate is complicated by the fact that the Baltic Sea has undergone dramatic changes since the end of the last ice age, with sea levels rising and falling, and the region was once dry land inhabited by prehistoric peoples who left behind settlements, tools, and structures, some of which are now submerged. Several genuinely archaeological sites have been discovered on the Baltic Sea floor, including Stone Age settlements and Mesolithic artifacts, proving that the region was indeed inhabited when sea levels were lower. The question remains whether the Baltic Sea anomaly represents another such archaeological site, perhaps a megalithic structure or ancient foundation now underwater, or whether it is simply an unusual geological formation that has captured imaginations because of its striking appearance on sonar images. Without extensive excavation and detailed archaeological analysis, which is expensive and difficult to conduct underwater, the true nature of the Baltic Sea anomaly remains debated, though mainstream scientific consensus leans heavily toward a natural explanation, leaving this as a mystery more in the realm of public imagination than serious archaeological controversy. Yet it reminds us that the seas and oceans still hold secrets from ancient times when coastlines were different, and now, submerged lands were home to prehistoric peoples whose settlements and monuments may still lie hidden beneath the waves. Turning to the realm of alleged technological anachronisms, we encounter claims of out-of-place artifacts, sometimes called OP arts, which are objects that appear to be too advanced or too old for their supposed context, challenging the conventional timeline of technological development. One of the most famous examples is the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. This corroded bronze device, dating to approximately 100 BCE, was initially dismissed as a simple astrolabe or navigation instrument, but detailed analysis over the past several decades has revealed it to be an extraordinarily sophisticated analog computer used to predict astronomical positions and eclipses decades in advance for calendar and astrological purposes. The mechanism contains dozens of precisely cut bronze gears arranged in a complex system that models the motions of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable accuracy. X-ray imaging and CT scans have revealed the intricate internal structure of the device, including differential gearing, a technology not seen again until mechanical clocks of the 14th century, and inscriptions that served as an instruction manual for its operation. The Antikythera mechanism demonstrates that ancient Greek craftsmen possessed far more advanced mechanical knowledge and precision metalworking skills than previously believed, and its discovery has forced a reassessment of ancient technology and engineering capabilities. The mystery lies not only in how such a sophisticated device was created, but also in why this technology apparently disappeared, leaving no similar artifacts or descriptions in ancient texts until the mechanism's discovery 2,000 years later. Did similar devices exist but fail to survive, their metal components recycled or corroded beyond recognition? Was this knowledge lost during the decline of Hellenistic civilization, or did it continue in some form that we have not yet discovered? The Antikythera mechanism stands as proof that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and that ancient peoples were capable of far more than we often credit them. Yet it also reminds us how fragile technological knowledge can be and how easily it can be lost across generations. Other claimed OP arts have proven less credible. The alleged ancient batteries found in Parthian sites near Baghdad are now thought to be storage vessels for sacred texts. The so-called Koso artifact, supposedly containing a spark plug in a geode, was never properly analyzed and likely a modern intrusion into a concretion, and the crystal skulls, supposedly of Aztec origin, have been proven to be modern forgeries carved with rotary tools not available to pre-Columbian peoples. These hoaxes and misidentifications have made the archaeological community rightfully skeptical of claims about out-of-place artifacts, but they should not blind us to genuine anomalies like the Antikythera mechanism, which demonstrate that ancient technologies were sometimes far more advanced than surviving artifacts and texts suggest, leaving us to wonder what other knowledge has been lost to time, corrosion, recycling of valuable materials, and the simple failure of information to be passed down across the ages. In the deserts of Iraq and Iran, another mystery has captured attention: the question of how ancient Mesopotamian and Persian empires managed water resources in arid environments, creating sophisticated hydraulic systems that supported large urban populations and intensive agriculture. The qanats, underground aqueducts that tap into aquifers and transport water through tunnels with carefully calculated gradients, represent an engineering achievement that required precise surveying, sustained labor, and advanced understanding of hydrology and geology. Some qanat systems stretch for dozens of miles and have remained functional for over 2,000 years, supplying water to cities, fields, and gardens in regions where surface water is scarce. The mystery lies in how ancient engineers determined the locations of underground water sources, calculated the gradients necessary to maintain steady flow without erosion or sedimentation, and excavated long underground tunnels with accuracy sufficient to meet planned routes and depths. The construction of qanats required vertical shafts sunk to the water table, often at considerable depths, connected by horizontal tunnels dug from the bottom of each shaft to the next, a technique requiring careful surveying to ensure the tunnels connected properly and maintained the correct downward slope. The risk was enormous. Workers labored in confined underground spaces with danger of collapse, asphyxiation, and flooding, yet thousands of these systems were built across the ancient Middle East and Central Asia, transforming arid landscapes into productive agricultural zones and enabling the rise of cities and empires in unlikely locations. Similar questions arise with the Inca road system in South America, which connected an empire stretching from modern Colombia to Chile, covering some 25,000 miles of roads ranging from coastal highways to mountain paths carved into cliff faces at elevations exceeding 16,000 feet. The Inca built suspension bridges made from woven grass ropes spanning deep gorges, constructed stone staircases climbing steep mountainsides, and created a communication system using relay runners who could carry messages across the empire in days. A feat that required not only engineering skill but also administrative sophistication, road maintenance, supply stations, and social organization that could coordinate labor and resources across vast distances and diverse environments. The Inca accomplished this without written language as we understand it, using instead a system of knotted strings called quipu for recording numerical information and possibly narrative content. Though quipu remain only partially understood and may encode information we cannot yet access. How did the Inca plan, construct, and maintain such an extensive infrastructure without maps, written plans, or beasts of burden capable of transporting heavy materials? How did they organize the labor of thousands of workers, ensure quality control across such distances, and adapt their construction techniques to such varied terrain from humid jungle to frozen highlands? These questions about ancient engineering and administration highlight how much we still do not understand about the practical accomplishments of pre-modern peoples. Achievements that required not just physical labor but also mathematical knowledge, engineering principles, social organization, and accumulated practical wisdom that has often been lost or dismissed because it was not recorded in texts that survived to the modern era. Among the most controversial archaeological mysteries are claims of ancient contact between Old World and New World civilizations before Columbus's voyage in 1492. Mainstream archaeology firmly maintains that the Americas were isolated from Eurasia and Africa from the end of the last ice age until the late 15th century, with the exception of Norse settlements in Newfoundland around 1000 CE, which are well documented archaeologically. However, various claims of earlier transoceanic contact persist, supported by alleged similarities in art, architecture, agricultural practices, and even claimed linguistic connections between cultures separated by thousands of miles of ocean. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence is the presence of cocaine and nicotine in Egyptian mummies, substances derived from plants native only to the Americas. Chemical analysis of several mummies, including that of Ramses II, reportedly detected these compounds, leading some researchers to suggest either trade contact with the Americas or the existence of now extinct Old World plants that produced similar alkaloids. Mainstream Egyptologists have largely dismissed these findings, suggesting contamination of samples, misidentification of compounds, or modern intrusion of substances into ancient remains. But definitive explanations remain elusive and the controversy persists. Similarly, claims of ancient Chinese exploration of the Americas, based on interpretations of historical texts and alleged Chinese artifacts found in North America, have not been substantiated by credible archaeological evidence despite their popularity in alternative history circles. The mystery of possible pre-Columbian contact remains contentious because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and similarities in pyramid building, artistic motifs, or cultural practices between distant civilizations can usually be explained by convergent cultural evolution rather than contact, as humans in different environments often develop similar solutions to similar problems independently. The presence of sweet potatoes, a New World crop, in Polynesia before European contact does demonstrate that some trans-Pacific exchange occurred in pre-Columbian times, likely through Polynesian voyagers who reached South America. But this limited contact does not constitute evidence for regular trade or cultural exchange between the Old and New Worlds. The question remains open whether any other contacts occurred, whether through deliberate voyages, accidental drift voyages by fishermen or traders blown off course, or visits that left no lasting archaeological footprint. But until definitive archaeological evidence emerges, mainstream scholarship will continue to maintain that the Americas developed in isolation, and claims of ancient transoceanic contact will remain in the realm of speculation and alternative archaeology rather than established historical fact. In the realm of megalithic construction, one of the most impressive and mysterious sites is the stone complex at Baalbek in modern Lebanon, where the Temple of Jupiter was built by the Romans on foundations that include some of the largest worked stones in the world. The foundation platform contains 3 massive limestone blocks known as the trilithon, each weighing approximately 800 tons and measuring about 64 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet wide. These blocks were quarried from a site about a quarter-mile away and somehow transported and lifted into position about 20 feet above ground level, where they were fitted together with such precision that the joints are nearly invisible. Even more remarkable is a 4th stone, the stone of the pregnant woman, still in the quarry, which weighs an estimated 1,000 tons and is the largest worked stone block in the world. A 5th stone discovered recently weighs even more, at approximately 1,650 tons, raising questions about whether these stones were intended for construction or abandoned as impractical. The mystery concerns how ancient peoples, whether Roman or the earlier cultures that occupied the site, managed to quarry, transport, and lift such massive stones using the technology available at the time. Roman engineering was certainly sophisticated, with knowledge of levers, pulleys, cranes, and the use of large workforces, but the scale of these particular stones exceeds anything described in Roman engineering texts or depicted in Roman art. Modern engineers have calculated that moving an 800-ton stone would require specialized equipment, careful planning, and potentially thousands of workers. Yet the ancient builders accomplished this feat and fitted the stones with precision that remains impressive even by contemporary standards. Some researchers have suggested that the trilithon predates Roman construction and was part of an earlier, possibly Bronze Age temple complex, Though no definitive evidence confirms this theory, and Roman construction techniques can account for the work if we assume sufficient resources, labor, and time were invested. The mystery of Baalbek reminds us that ancient engineers were capable of monumental achievements that stretched the limits of their technology, and that our admiration for these accomplishments need not require invoking lost advanced civilizations or extraterrestrial assistance, as human ingenuity, organization, and determination can accomplish extraordinary feats with seemingly primitive tools when motivated by religious devotion, political power, or cultural pride. Yet the question remains, why did the builders choose to work with such massive stones when smaller blocks would have been far easier to manage and could have achieved the same structural result? Was it a demonstration of power and capability, a religious requirement, or simply the preference of engineers who saw technical challenges as opportunities to display their skills? The Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, has generated considerable controversy and speculation since its rediscovery in 1929. The map, drawn on gazelle skin, depicts the Atlantic Ocean, the western coasts of Europe and Africa, and the eastern coast of South America with remarkable accuracy for its time. But what has sparked intense debate is a landmass at the bottom of the map that some researchers claim represents Antarctica, a continent not officially discovered until 1820. Moreover, proponents of this theory suggest that the coastline shown corresponds not to ice-covered Antarctica as it appears today, but to the actual coastline beneath the ice, which would require mapping technology and exploration dating back thousands of years before the ice accumulated. Mainstream cartographers and historians explain that the southern landmass on the Piri Reis map is actually part of South America, specifically the coast of Argentina and Patagonia, shown at an incorrect angle due to the limitations of 16th century cartography and the challenge of representing the curved surface of the Earth on a flat surface. They note that Piri Reis himself indicated his map was compiled from various earlier sources, including maps captured from Spanish sailors, suggesting he was working from existing European explorations of the Americas rather than from ancient unknown sources. The mathematical projections used in the map are consistent with the knowledge available in the 16th century, and the supposed correspondence to Antarctica's subglacial coastline is a result of selective interpretation and does not hold up to detailed scrutiny when the entire coastline is compared. However, alternative historians maintain that certain features of the map remain unexplained by conventional analysis and point to notes on the map itself suggesting Piri Reis used sources dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, which they interpret as evidence of ancient map-making traditions preserving knowledge from even earlier epochs. The controversy surrounding the Piri Reis map illustrates a broader tension in archaeology and history between mainstream scholarly approaches that demand rigorous evidence and alternative interpretations that see hints of lost knowledge in ambiguous artifacts. While the sensational claims about the map have been largely debunked by careful analysis, the map itself remains a remarkable document of early cartographic knowledge, demonstrating the rapid transmission of geographic information following European exploration of the Americas and the sophisticated compilation techniques used by Ottoman scholars who synthesized knowledge from Greek, Arabic, and European sources into comprehensive world maps that advance geographic understanding, even if they did not possess the ancient or anomalous knowledge that some enthusiasts attribute to them. Submerged ruins found off the coasts of various countries have fueled speculation about lost civilizations and ancient maritime cultures whose remains now lie beneath the waves. Off the coast of Yonaguni in Japan, a massive underwater rock formation featuring what appear to be terrace structures, straight edges, right angles, and possible carved features has been interpreted by some researchers as a man-made monument, perhaps a temple or ceremonial complex dating back as much as 10,000 years when sea levels were lower and the formation would have been on dry land. The discoverer of the formation, a diving instructor named Kihachiro Aratake, and some supporting researchers point to features that seem too regular and geometric to be natural, including what they describe as staircases, columns, and even carved animal figures. However, the majority of marine geologists and archaeologists who have examined the Yonaguni Formation conclude that it is a natural geological formation, specifically a sandstone and mudstone formation that has been shaped by erosion, tectonic activity, and natural fracturing patterns that can create remarkably regular geometric features including flat surfaces, right angles, and step-like formations. They note that sandstone tends to break along natural planes creating straight edges, that the rock type present at Yonaguni is known to form such features elsewhere, and that no tool marks, construction debris, or clear evidence of human modification has been found at the site. The debate continues because the formation is undeniably striking and includes some features that are difficult to explain through natural processes alone. But without clearer evidence of human construction, the scientific consensus remains that Yonaguni is a natural formation that has been selectively interpreted to appear artificial. Similar claims have been made about underwater formations off the coast of Cuba, off Bimini in the Bahamas, and in the Gulf of Cam Hat in India, with each case generating initial excitement followed by more sober geological assessment that usually concludes natural origin. These discoveries are significant because they remind us that much of the coastal landscape inhabited by ancient peoples is now underwater due to sea level rise following the last ice age, and genuine archaeological sites from the Paleolithic and Mesolithic periods do exist beneath the waves, including settlements, tools, and possibly structures that have been discovered through underwater archaeology. The challenge lies in distinguishing actual archaeological sites from natural formations and in conducting the difficult and expensive underwater research necessary to properly investigate these submerged landscapes. But as technology improves and more underwater surveys are conducted, we may indeed discover genuine evidence of ancient coastal civilizations whose remains have been hidden beneath the sea for thousands of years, though such discoveries will require careful scientific verification, rather than sensational claims based on selective interpretation of ambiguous features. The mystery of trepanation, the surgical practice of drilling or scraping holes into the human skull, presents questions about ancient medical knowledge and the purposes behind this dangerous procedure. Archaeological evidence shows that trepanation was practiced in various cultures across the world from Neolithic times through the modern era, with skulls showing clear signs of the procedure found in Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America. What makes this practice particularly mysterious is not just that it was performed, but that it was often survived, as evidenced by bone healing around the edges of the holes, indicating the patient lived for months or years after the operation. The survival rate for trepanation in some ancient cultures appears to have been surprisingly high, with studies of Inca skulls showing evidence of successful healing in a majority of cases, suggesting that ancient surgeons had developed techniques to perform the procedure with some degree of safety despite the lack of anesthesia, antibiotics, or modern surgical instruments. The purposes of trepanation remain debated. Some cases clearly relate to treatment of head injuries, particularly skull fractures from warfare or accidents, where removing bone fragments or relieving pressure from bleeding would be medically sound and potentially life-saving. Other cases may have been attempts to treat headaches, epilepsy, or mental disorders based on beliefs about the causes of these conditions, possibly believing that releasing evil spirits or balancing bodily humors required opening the skull. Some researchers have suggested ritual or religious purposes for certain trepanations, particularly those showing multiple procedures on the same individual, possibly related to initiation rites, demonstrations of courage, or beliefs about enhancing spiritual perception. The techniques used varied by culture and period. Some skulls show neat circular holes drilled using a bow drill or similar rotating tool. Others show rectangular openings cut with a sharp blade, while still others show areas where bone was gradually scraped away layer by layer using a sharp stone or metal tool. The fact that this procedure was practiced independently in widely separated cultures suggests either that head injuries were common enough and serious enough to motivate the development of skull surgery, or that certain universal human experiences such as migraines or seizures led different cultures to similar surgical interventions, or possibly both. What remains mysterious is how ancient surgeons learned the procedure, how they maintained sterile conditions to prevent infection, what they used for pain relief, and how knowledge of successful techniques was transmitted and refined over generations without written medical texts in many cases, representing a remarkable achievement of practical medical knowledge gained through trial and error and careful observation, even if the theoretical understanding of why the procedure worked was often based on beliefs we would now consider incorrect. Ancient acoustic engineering presents another fascinating mystery, as various ancient sites around the world demonstrate sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and architectural acoustics that seems to exceed what we might expect from cultures without scientific instruments for measuring sound waves or frequencies. The Greek theater at Epidaurus, built in the 4th century BCE, is famous for its extraordinary acoustics, allowing a whisper at the center of the stage to be heard clearly by audience members sitting in the back rows nearly 200 feet away, a feat that modern acoustic engineers have studied extensively to understand how the ancient builders achieved this effect without the benefit of modern acoustic science. Research has revealed that the limestone seats act as acoustic filters, suppressing low-frequency background noise while allowing the frequencies of the human voice to propagate clearly, and that the precise geometry of the theater, with its semicircular design and carefully calculated angles, focuses sound waves toward the audience in a way that amplifies the actor's voice naturally. The builders of Epidaurus achieved this remarkable acoustic performance through a combination of mathematical knowledge about geometric proportions, empirical testing and adjustment during construction, and possibly an intuitive understanding of how sound behaves in spaces, though we have no ancient texts explaining their acoustic design principles. Similar acoustic mysteries appear at ancient sites worldwide. At Chichen Itza in Mexico, clapping your hands at the base of the pyramid produces an echo that sounds remarkably like the chirp of the sacred Quetzal bird, an effect that may have been deliberately designed for ceremonial purposes. In the ancient hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, a subterranean temple complex dating to 3,300 BCE, certain chambers produce powerful resonance effects at specific frequencies, particularly around 110 Hz, which researchers have found can affect human brain activity and may have been used in religious rituals to induce altered states of consciousness. At Newgrange in Ireland, a Neolithic passage tomb built around 3,200 BCE, the interior chamber produces strong resonance effects and evidence suggests it may have been used for ritual chanting or drumming, with the acoustic properties of the space enhancing the psychological and spiritual impact of ceremonies. These examples suggest that ancient peoples understood sound not just as something to be heard, but as a tool that could be manipulated through architecture to create specific psychological, emotional, or spiritual effects, and that they developed sophisticated empirical knowledge about acoustics through observation and experimentation even without the theoretical framework that modern physics provides, leaving us to wonder what other subtle engineering principles ancient builders understood and applied in ways we are only now beginning to recognize and appreciate through modern scientific analysis of their achievements. Ancient surgery and medical treatments that seem impossibly advanced for their time period present mysteries about the extent of medical knowledge in cultures that lacked modern scientific understanding of anatomy, germ theory, or pharmaceuticals. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian medical text dating to around 1600 BCE but possibly copying knowledge from even earlier periods, describes 48 cases of injuries and surgical treatments with a level of clinical observation, systematic organization, and rational approach to medicine that seems strikingly modern. The text describes injuries from head to toe, provides examination procedures, diagnoses, prognosis, and treatment recommendations using anatomical terminology and logical reasoning rather than magical spells or religious incantations, though some magical elements do appear in treatment sections. The papyrus demonstrates that ancient Egyptian physicians understood that the brain controlled bodily functions, that the heart circulated blood through vessels, and that injuries to different parts of the body produced specific symptoms that could guide treatment. They performed surgical procedures including setting broken bones, treating wounds, and possibly even attempting brain surgery, using instruments made of copper, bronze, and sharpened stone. The mystery lies in how this sophisticated medical knowledge was acquired, how it was transmitted and taught, and why Egyptian medicine later became more focused on magical treatments and religious healing rather than maintaining and advancing the rational observational approach demonstrated in early texts. Similarly, in ancient India, texts describing surgical procedures including rhinoplasty, cataract removal, and caesarean section suggest advanced surgical knowledge dating back over 2,000 years. The Sushruta Samhita, an ancient Sanskrit text attributed to the physician Sushruta, describes hundreds of surgical instruments, numerous surgical techniques, and complex procedures including plastic surgery to reconstruct noses, a practice that developed in response to judicial punishment that involved amputation of the nose. The text describes using skin flaps from the forehead to reconstruct noses in a procedure that resembles modern reconstructive surgery techniques, and archaeological evidence confirms that such surgeries were indeed performed successfully, as skulls have been found showing evidence of healed facial surgery. The knowledge and skill required to perform successful surgery without anesthesia, antibiotics, or modern understanding of infection control represents a remarkable medical achievement, and the mystery concerns how ancient surgeons developed these techniques, how they learned anatomy, how they dealt with pain control and infection prevention, and how this knowledge was preserved and transmitted across generations. Some ancient medical knowledge was clearly gained through battlefield surgery, where physicians treating war wounds would have gained extensive practical experience with human anatomy and trauma treatment, while other knowledge may have come from dissection of animals or possibly human cadavers in cultures where such practices were permitted. The loss of much ancient medical knowledge, either through the destruction of texts, the fall of civilizations, or the suppression of pre-Christian or pre-Islamic medical traditions, means we may never fully understand the extent of ancient medical capabilities, but the evidence we do have suggests that ancient physicians and surgeons were far more knowledgeable and skilled than popular stereotypes of primitive ancient medicine would suggest, and that modern medicine represents not so much a complete break with the past, but rather a continuation and expansion of observational and rational approaches to healing that have roots stretching back thousands of years into antiquity. The Copper Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in caves near Qumran between 1947 and 1956, is unique among the scrolls because unlike the others which contain biblical texts, commentaries, or sectarian documents written on parchment or papyrus, the Copper Scroll is engraved on copper sheets and contains a list of locations where massive quantities of gold, silver, and other treasures were allegedly hidden. Written in an unusual form of Hebrew with some Greek letters, the scroll lists 64 locations with descriptions like, in the ruin that is in the valley of Acre, under the steps which go eastward, 40 cubits. A chest of silver and its vessels weighing 17 talents, providing specific directions and quantities for treasure caches allegedly hidden throughout Judea. The total value of the treasure described in the scroll, if it existed, would be enormous, possibly representing the wealth of the Jerusalem temple hidden before the Roman destruction in 70 CE, or the treasury of the Qumran community, or even a fiction or allegory rather than a literal inventory. The mystery centers on whether the treasure described in the Copper Scroll ever actually existed, whether any of it might still be hidden, and what the scroll's purpose was. Despite numerous attempts to locate the treasures using the scroll's directions, nothing has been found, leading skeptics to conclude that the scroll describes fictional treasure, perhaps created as a literary work, a coded document with allegorical meanings, or even an ancient fraud. However, the effort and expense involved in creating the scroll, the specific details provided, and the unusual nature of the document suggest to many researchers that it must have had some practical purpose and that its creator believed the information was real and important. The language and spelling used in the scroll differ from other Dead Sea Scrolls, suggesting it may have been created by different authors or at a different time, and some of the locations mentioned cannot be identified with certainty, either because geographical names have changed, because the descriptions are too vague, or because the landscape has been altered by 2,000 years of erosion, construction, and agricultural activity. Theories about the scroll range from the pragmatic, suggesting it documents actual temple treasure hidden during the Jewish revolt against Rome, to the symbolic, interpreting the treasure as metaphorical or allegorical rather than literal, to the skeptical, viewing the scroll as an ancient fantasy or deception. Without discovering any of the described treasure, the copper scroll remains a tantalizing mystery, a potential treasure map to unimaginable wealth or an elaborate ancient puzzle whose true meaning and purpose died with its creators, leaving modern treasure hunters and scholars to debate whether somewhere beneath the hills and ruins of Israel and the West Bank, ancient treasures still wait in the darkness, exactly where the copper scroll says they are, or whether the scroll describes treasures that never existed except in the imagination of its ancient author. The questions surrounding the construction and purpose of Stonehenge, one of the most iconic archaeological sites in the world, continue to generate new research and theories despite centuries of study. Located on the Salisbury Plain in England, Stonehenge was constructed in several phases between approximately 3000 and 1500 BCE, involving the transport and arrangement of massive sarsen stones weighing up to 25 tons and smaller bluestones weighing several tons each, sourced from quarries as far as 150 miles away in Wales. Recent research has identified the specific quarries in the Preseli Hills where the bluestones originated, and evidence suggests they were transported partly by water and partly overland using a combination of sledges, rollers, and boats, requiring enormous communal effort and organization. The purpose of Stonehenge remains debated. Early theories suggested it was a Druid temple, though we now know it predates the Druids by thousands of years. Astronomical observatory theories propose it was used to track solar and lunar cycles, particularly marking the summer and winter solstices when the rising sun aligns perfectly with specific stones. Healing temple theories based on the high number of burials at the site and evidence of people traveling from far distances suggest it was a destination for the sick seeking miraculous cures. And ancestor worship theories propose it served as a domain of the dead, where funerary rituals and ancestor veneration took place. The truth may encompass all these purposes, as the site was used over thousands of years and its function may have evolved as different cultures occupied and modified it. Recent discoveries have revolutionized understanding of Stonehenge. Excavations at nearby Dynton Walls revealed a massive village site where thousands of people gathered for feasts and ceremonies, suggesting Stonehenge was part of a larger sacred landscape rather than an isolated monument. Chemical analysis of pig bones found at Dynton Walls shows the animals were raised hundreds of miles away and brought to the site for feasting, indicating that Stonehenge drew participants from across Britain. An isotope analysis of human remains buried at Stonehenge reveals that some individuals came from as far as Scotland and continental Europe, demonstrating that the site's significance extended far beyond the local region. The construction of Stonehenge required not only physical labor but also mathematical knowledge to create the precise circular layout, engineering skill to shape and raise the massive stones, and social organization to coordinate the efforts of large workforces over many generations. The site's alignments with celestial events demonstrate sophisticated astronomical observation and suggest that Neolithic peoples had developed complex religious or cosmological beliefs centered on the movements of sun and moon. Yet many mysteries remain. Why was Stonehenge built in this particular location? How did Neolithic peoples organize and motivate the massive labor investment required? What specific ceremonies and rituals took place at the site? Why were some individuals granted burial at Stonehenge while others were not? And why was the site eventually abandoned, its original purposes forgotten, leaving it to stand enigmatically on the plain for thousands of years until modern archaeologists began the patient work of reconstructing its lost meanings? A process that continues to yield new insights and raise new questions with each passing year. As our 60-minute journey through archaeological mysteries draws to a close, we find ourselves confronting not answers but deeper questions about the human past, the capabilities of our ancestors, and the limits of our own knowledge. Each mystery we have explored, from the massive stones of Egypt and Lebanon to the enigmatic scripts that resist translation, From the precision of ancient astronomical observations to the sophistication of prehistoric medical procedures, reveals that ancient peoples were far more knowledgeable, capable, and innovative than popular imagination often credits. The archaeological record is not a simple story of primitive peoples slowly progressing toward modern enlightenment, but rather a complex tapestry of human cultures that developed sophisticated technologies, accumulated remarkable knowledge, achieved extraordinary feats of engineering and organization, and then sometimes lost that knowledge when civilizations collapsed, when traditions were disrupted, or when circumstances changed and old knowledge became irrelevant. The mysteries that remain are not primarily about ancient aliens, lost supercivilizations, or paranormal phenomena, though such theories will always capture popular imagination, but rather about the incredible diversity of human ingenuity and the sobering reality that knowledge is fragile, easily lost when not continuously transmitted, recorded, and valued. What the unexplained archaeological mysteries teach us is humility in the face of the past, reminding us that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, that our assumptions about what ancient peoples could or could not do are often proven wrong by new discoveries, and that the earth still holds countless secrets waiting to be revealed by patient excavation, careful analysis, and open-minded inquiry. As technology advances, providing tools like LiDAR to see through jungle canopy, ground-penetrating radar to detect buried structures without digging, DNA analysis to trace ancient migrations and relationships, and computer algorithms to analyze patterns in undeciphered texts, we may solve some of these ancient mysteries, finding explanations that satisfy both scientific rigor and common sense. Yet with each mystery solved, new questions emerge, and new discoveries reveal how much we have yet to learn about the human story, a story that stretches back not just thousands but hundreds of thousands of years, encompassing countless cultures and civilizations whose achievements have been worn away by time, buried beneath cities and farmland, or drowned beneath rising seas. The archaeological mysteries that remain unexplained are not embarrassments to science or failures of investigation, but rather invitations to wonder, opportunities for future discovery, and reminders that history is not a closed book, but an ongoing investigation into who we are as a species, where we came from, what we are capable of achieving, and what lessons the past might teach us as we face the challenges of the present and future. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not any specific artifact or site, but rather the question of how we should understand our relationship to the past, how we balance skepticism with openness to new evidence, and how we tell the human story in a way that honors both the scientific method and the profound sense of wonder that draws us to explore ruins, decode ancient texts, and ask questions about mysteries that may never be fully solved but which make us more curious, more humble, and more deeply connected to the countless generations who came before us, leaving behind enigmas that challenge our certainty and inspire our imagination even now, millennia after their creators returned to dust.